Hey, greetings. I hope your day of Canva learning is going well. My name is James Allen. I am currently working at the Kentucky Department of Education as the statewide school library lead. I'm trying something new. Like I'm probably going to edit this out, but maybe not. Canva is awesome. It's one of many tools that I like, but I think it does make design and graphic design and creating products easier for a lot of people. What I've noticed though in some things that, and you've probably noticed them too, like when you go to school to be a teacher, you don't necessarily get a course in graphic design or like heavy in communications type stuff. And I think that's kind of bad because every teacher I've known, or even administrators, everyone are constantly creating instructional materials for students and communications for parents and presentations and professional learning and all those kinds of things. So, pause. So I think just going over a few like basic things will, like none of these are like rules that you have to follow every single time, but I think doing some of them will make your designs easier, especially for your students to read and to understand and to comprehend. And I'm by no means a accessibility expert or cognitive scientist, like talking about cognitive load and things like that. But I think a lot of it we can do just from looking, just from our eye. And if things look kind of difficult or you got to squint to kind of read it, like something's off. So I have a terrible design up here on the screen. And first, I hope that most of you will like watch this on double speed and then spend the extra time like just kind of taking a look at some of your designs and seeing what you can tweak and edit to make it a little bit easier to read or more appealing. I'm going to give you a bunch of links in a document that'll help you dig into some of these things. One thing that I really like and have liked for a long time is the Canva Design School. And right now I'm on this lesson for typography and layout. And over here on the right, you can see the lessons, and a lot of them, maybe all of them, have a video you can watch about the topic, but also an activity. And when you go to that activity, it's actually like an interactive Canva design. So you open it up in Canva. Here's the first page. It's talking about text hierarchy and using text to kind of, show meaning based on, the kind of text that we use. I watched this video today just to kind of refresh my memory. I've kind of been using the word font in the wrong way. Like actually, a lot of the times what we mean is a typeface. So a typeface is kind of like Arial. It's a family of fonts. And then the actual font would be like Arial Narrow or Arial Bold or, all of those things. So this kind of talks a little bit about that. It also is mostly focused on the hierarchy stuff here. So on the left, you get a little video that you can watch. And then on the right, you can actually go through and do these things. So it's wanting us to make this a headline. There are no actual rules about this. So I'm going to, change this to, why is this doing this? Come on, man. So I'm actually going to kind of play around with this a little bit. Over here on the left, it's kind of showing us how we can take all of this text that's exactly the same and then kind of change the fonts to show a hierarchy of these, of these items. So I'm going to take this first. So I'm going to make it a little bigger. I changed it to Arial already. I'm going to make that bold. And then subheading we'll do, we'll do Arial again, but we'll make it smaller. I don't like recording when my kids are walking through the room. Going for a walk? All right. And then this body stuff we could just turn down. So this is really quick, but you get the idea. So we have a headline, kind of a subheading, and then body text there. That kind of makes this look better. Anyway, this is Canva Design School. so many courses, so many different topics you can watch. You don't have to go through all of these, but maybe just pick out the ones that kind of look interesting to you or the ones that you have questions about and go through the lessons, go through the activities. It will help you out a ton. So let's go back to this crazy design I have. So one of the first things I want to talk about is, like we kind of talked about, that cognitive load. I think sometimes when we see designs, especially like for slides and posters, there's just too much. And this is a fictional thing. I didn't want to take somebody's actual design and, be rude and mean and, tear it apart. So this I just actually created. This is about school libraries, and I've got a title up here. School libraries and librarians are awesome. And then I've got a bunch of text that kind of says why, but this is a lot for one page. I'm not saying you can't have this much, but let's first, kind of an obvious thing is I'm using like a billion different fonts. And a good rule is to stick to like 2 and maybe 3. And then when I say 2 or 3, that's including like the size of the font and the weight of the font. So kind of like that Canva design school activity that we looked at where it talked about a heading and a subheading and then the body text. Like that's really all you need. If you start getting more than that, you start to get kind of this overwhelming feeling like you see right now of all these different kind of fonts. So I'm going to go in this kind of heading font up here. We'll leave that alone for a minute. And the Y, it's kind of it's not really a bunch of information. So it's one word, so that's not a big deal. But yeah, let's go ahead and change some of these fonts and make this look a little bit better. And first, I guess let's have a before and after. So let's duplicate this page. You can do Control D. I'm going to talk about keyboard shortcuts in a second because they're really, really cool and can save you a lot of time. So I've got this one. Let's work on this one and change this font. I actually asked a friend of mine. He's accessibility specialist, like I was talking about before. I asked him, like, is there a font that's like more accessible than others? And he gave me a good explanation and kind of was talking about just, like the font Calibri. And you would think that's a pretty accessible font, but some of the way the glyphs connect, like the way that, like an I and a T connect, some of the things connect and don't put enough space in there for you to see individual letters. So he mentioned Inclusive Sans, which is a Google font. Also, Lexend is another one. Unfortunately, at least I looked for Inclusive Sans in Canva. I did not see it in there, so I don't think they have that one. But we can try some other things. Let's just do something kind of simple. And there are so many in here. So let's look at this. Click on text styles right here. And here you can see fonts I have in the document. That's not really helpful. Canva even kind of breaks these down. So you've got handwriting, corporate display, headings, paragraph, sans serif and serif. So serif are those little tiny squiggly things on the edges of the font. So like Times New Roman is a serif font, where Arial is a sans serif. It's without the serifs. Rounded, modern looks kind of skinny. Let's look at just sans serif and see what pops up here. Ooh, I like, let's do this Rotice. That one's a little much. Let's see what else we have. Ooh, there's Lexend. It didn't pop up before. I want to try that. Awesome. And you can see there's a kind of a family there, so. So now that I have this, let's talk about like kind of how we center or justify text. That makes it easier to read and less easy to read. So right now it's centered. I'm going to make these all left aligned for now. And we'll go to this one. And I think we can go to the top and do document fonts. Yeah, do Lexend here, Lexend here, Lexend here. all of these though, we can select, and I'm going to select multiple ones. I'm going to hold the shift key down. That's what I do a lot of times, a keyboard shortcut. So you can select multiple ones, and then we can justify those all at once to the left. And we can actually make them all the same size all at once. That's really tiny, but, and let's make this one, let's make this one 23 as well. All right, so at least we have this kind of the same kind of font here. Another thing I want to talk about, which is pretty important, is color and contrast. Right now, we definitely have some contrast problems, right? So my background is this gradient that goes from all the way black to like kind of this purpley blue color. And it looks cool, but it's just not going to work for this design. And something I think about often, I feel like it's less of a problem now. A lot of our classrooms have, like those smart TVs that are, interactive, kind of getting away from projectors a little bit. But some schools still have quite a few projectors. And I notice, like when I'm designing on my MacBook or my, my Windows PC at home where I've got a nice monitor, everything looks pretty good. But then when I get to a projector that's, the bulb's maybe a little bit old, the lamp, some of my contrasts and colors don't exactly pop up on the projector screen the way they do on my monitor. So if you think about it, like when your monitor's off, like that's about as dark as it can get. And when you use white, that's about as bright as it can get. And that contrast level is determined between, the foreground and the background. And WebAIM, you've probably heard of. It's a web accessibility. They have lots of standards and tips and tricks and things that you can do to make your content as accessible as possible. But they have a contrast checker. And basically you're trying to get to 7:1. So here you can put a foreground color in with the hex value and a background color in with the hex value, or you can use the color picker here. And as long as that's 7:1 or at least close to that, most folks are going to be able to, kind of read that pretty well on a screen. So I'm going to go back to my design. I'm actually going to go in and let's make our background just white. And like right away, like our fonts kind of pop off the screen. I've got this kind of crazy graphic here in the middle. It makes no sense. It's a book, but that's about the only reason it makes sense. I'm going to make that smaller, put it over here on the right. We have another problem here. I've kind of messed with some things on purpose to just give you an idea of what they look like. This one, pretty much okay. I actually went into the spacing, and that's right here next to, in between the lists and effects button right there. So if you click on spacing, you can do letter spacing or line spacing. So sometimes these, you can kind of nudge these to get a, decent look, but if you mess with them too much, it makes it harder to read. So like this one decreases and increases the space between character letters. So let's see, this one we've got, this one we've made a little too close together. So let's put that back to 1.4. And these numbers might differ depending on which typeface you're using. I don't like that there. I'm going to move that out of the way. I've also got some tilt in this one. I'm going to make that back to 0 degrees. And we still have quite a bit of information here. I'm going to just get rid of this one. Put that on another slide, or think about it for your kids, another presentation. Still feel like this one looks a little different. It's Lexend. Oh, letter spacing was off on that one. There we go. Now these are all looking kind of the same. So there's that. We've got this kind of Y thing right here. We'll leave that up there. This image is kind of in the way of our text. So right here we've got some, I've got this little frame, this kind of blue thing. It will, that that will change your contrast too, because now we've got a background of this blue color, which is not white. So our contrast is going to be less between this blue and this black color, but it's still pretty good. But if I make this a lighter color, you can see that it gets easier to read pretty quickly. And I think I'm going to speed through parts of this. I don't like that image. I'm going to get rid of that one. I'm actually going to get rid of this one too. It's kind of busy. So now we've got our fonts kind of under control. I'm actually going to select all of these again, holding the shift key down. And if you get these little handles, you'll notice I'm changing the actual font size. I'm not changing the text boxes. I'm changing the actual font size. So that's kind of a cool, handy feature. And then next, let's talk a little bit about negative space. Some people call this white space. I like the word negative space better because white kind of implies a color, and you can have negative space without having the color white. So negative space is this kind of area in between elements. And right now, like even this border is just a little too close to the edge. You need to have a little bit of space for your brain to kind of make sense of things. And so I'm going to make that a little less close to the edge. I'm going to bring it down a little bit. And I know I'm changing topics a bunch here, but you notice when you move things, you get these little guides that pop up. They can be really helpful in helping you align things, which is kind of connected to negative space because you want things to have similar amounts of negative space. And I really like this feature. So you can see where it pops those numbers up. That's the distance between these elements. And I can make those the same just by kind of holding on here. Now they're all 51 exactly. It's not like a number I'm going for. I'm just trying to make those the same. So that's negative space. Even like this icon of a book over here, we don't want it right next to the text. We want some space in between that and our other elements. So another cool feature in Canva that you might not know about, I've got this book here. And I'm going to click on this little info button. You can click on view more by this person who's submitted this artwork to Canva. I think a lot of them come from the Noun project. This is helpful because I've seen a lot of designs that look like they have art that's created by 10 different people, which it might be true. If you're just grabbing random kind of clip art and graphics from Canva, they're not all created by the same person. But if you get them created by the same person, you kind of get this same kind of style, right? They're using the same line weights. They're using similar colors. This one's an icon, so we can change the color if we wanted to. Let's add this anvil. I know that's kind of silly. Let's do this computer monitor. That's a little more education and library-ish. Make these smaller. Now, these kind of graphics kind of go together now. They're not perfect, but at least they look like they're kind of in the same style, where that other graphic I had was definitely not. I'm going to let this one run off the page a little bit, just to be a little more artsy. So we talked about a lot of things. We talked about cognitive load, having too much information on the page. We've talked about typefaces and fonts. We've talked about kind of layout and negative space. I'm still not super happy with that on this design. I think it maybe just, these need to be a little bit smaller overall. And then I can spread them out a little bit. And then maybe all right. So I mentioned this earlier, the keyboard shortcuts. I use a ton, regardless of the software I'm using, Canva, Adobe Express, Photoshop, whatever I'm using. I use keyboard shortcuts all the time. They just speed things up. So if you can picture this, depending on whether you're left or right-handed, one hand is on your mouse and one hand is on your keyboard. And you can kind of keep those there and not constantly be kind of clicking around for the things you need, and instead use the keyboard shortcut. Here's the list, and they're a little bit different for Mac because of the command key, but Here's Windows. A lot of them you know, like Control Z, undo. Redo's Control Y. I really like add text. That just adds a text box really quickly, just hitting the T key. R is a rectangle. A line, that could be helpful. There's lots of arrangement things. I'll show you that in the menu, like kind of centering things on the page or centering groups or just grouping elements together. That can be helpful. There's a few video shortcuts, some zooming shortcuts, all kinds of edit text shortcuts. Here are some view ones. I don't use the comment ones too much. And then there's a few more for the desktop app. You can, if you use that. I'm mostly on the website myself. So I'm going to go in here. I'm just going to hit the R key. I'm going to hit the R key and create a rectangle. And you notice if right now I'm kind of just dragging this around, resizing this. If I hold the Shift key down, it snaps to a square, which is kind of cool and saves you a bunch of time, especially if you're wanting to keep this a square. So I'm going to make this a square. I'm actually making my own little custom bullet. And then I'm going to put that over here. Move this over a little bit. Keep these lined up. And I'm actually going to just copy this, Control C, Control V. And now I've got my own custom bullet. I'm going to change the color of that. Let's do this purple instead. So that kind of talks about some keyboard shortcuts. What else am I forgetting? Let's do this. I think one thing I'm not super happy with is this typeface that I have for the heading up here. So I'm going to go here and do headings. Let's see if I can find something I like better. So here's an example of a typeface that, it's kind of this handwritten look, kind of a scripty look. I think when we're making instructional resources, like it's one thing if we're making a poster for a concert that's coming up and we're, being a little more free with their artistic license. But when you want kids to be able to read text, or you want even adults to be able to read text, it's helpful to use typefaces that we're used to seeing. And there aren't a ton of those. Like it's really the sans serif fonts and like the Times New Roman type fonts. That's about it. Like when you see a road sign, that kind of shows you the name of a street or a direction, they're not in crazy fonts. Like they want people to be able to read those easily. And like you notice the contrast is really easy to use. So I'm going to click this typeface. I'm going to see if I can get this heading thing to work again. Retry. All right, another quick tip here. It's called down detector. Canva. There's some reports. It kind of shows you when websites are down or having issues. All right, try this again. I think I got Canva working again. I'm going to click on my heading font up here and look at the headings and let's try maybe this kills. Yeah, that one looks good. I like that. Let's make our little box a little bigger there. And earlier I mentioned those alignment tools. So I've got, let's say we have this kind of like this. I can choose this one and hold the Shift key down and choose that little box. And then I can go to position. And then I can center those, align them, and I can change where they are like in terms of layers. And now that those two are together, I might even want to group them. So I'm going to do Control G, and that groups these two things together. So when I move one, it moves both of them. And you can always ungroup that. Like you can right click and do ungroup. You can do Control Shift G. I'm going to make this just a little smaller. All right. Now, what was I doing? Okay. I'm not super happy about my bullets here. I'm going to make those a little smaller. That was really loud. So we've talked about colors some. Let's, there's a few ways you can do colors. So this is kind of cool in Canva. You click on your item, especially if it's an icon where you can change the color of it, not a photo. But if you click the color right there, you can see document colors. You can also click add a new color and use the eyedropper. On this one, I'm just going to choose color right there. And let's make this color. Now let's make it this color. All right, one more feature I want to show you all. So if you go to File and go to View Settings, it's kind of down there in the menu, and check Design Accessibility. Canva will actually go through and kind of check some of the things that we've talked about. So I'm going to click that. And over here on the right, you'll see typography. It's happy with color contrast, 4 issues. So what do we have? Low. Oh, it's going back and checking this first page here. Yeah, so it's like, yeah, totally got some problems. So this one, and page 2, it doesn't like this contrast right here. I guess it's too close to the white, so it wants a darker color there. So we'll do that. And then that's just kind of a quick way to kind of do some accessibility checks. You can also save, export this as a PNG, or just, even take a screenshot of it. And I'm going to do this real quick. Take a screenshot, I'm going to copy it. And this website actually lets you simulate color blindness. So I'm going to paste in our design here. And then you can click on these different, types of color blindness. So I don't really know a lot about these because I don't have it, and then you kind of get a little preview of what your design looks like for those folks, which is pretty interesting. So depending on which colors you choose, it may not matter too much, but especially if you're doing a bunch of red and greens, you might get some issues where people aren't going to be able to tell the difference between the colors in your design. Okay, so let's take a look at what we've done. Obviously this can apply to anything. Another thing, we don't really have time to go into like every kind of design, but another thing to consider is like what device, we talked about this a little bit with the projector, what device are your viewers going to be on? So I've gotten some designs and I've tried to look at them on my phone or my iPad, and it's really not that great because the design was almost designed like it was something that needed to be printed out, and it had multiple columns. Think about things that are digital. It's way easier to just have a single column of information. Maybe some things off to the side just a little bit. But consider how your folks are going to be viewing this. Most people are not going to print off your newsletter and read it on paper. They might, but I think most people are going to read your newsletter in your email or on your website. So consider how things are going to look for the person on the other side, and make your design as accessible as you can. So let's take a look at our before, which was this crazy mess, and after some changes, we end up with this. A lot easier to read. It's a little bit less information we talked about. We reduced the number of colors. We reduced the number of fonts and typefaces. And I'm going to give you a bunch of links that'll, some of the things that I shared that'll help you out later on. We talked about how to get to, make our graphics look a little more consistent inside of Canva. I hope this helped. And I hope you watched it on double speed, and now you can play around with some of your own designs. And I look forward to watching the rest of the training today with you. All right. See ya.